Hi, I'm Dr. Kylie Dodsworth, and I want to talk about anxiety and depression and mental health. So this is really common these days. Lots of people can experience symptoms of anxiety where they feel this sort of on edge feeling. They might have their heart racing, you might feel a little bit shaky, you can't think properly. We call it a bit of a flight and fight response. Or it might be more of a low grade anxiety where you just don't feel like you've quite got things handled, or that something bad might be going to happen. And depression is more so when we actually just feel a bit flat in our mood and we don't feel as motivated as usual. We might be a bit more teary, we might be a bit irritable. We're just not really firing on all cylinders. And it can become significant. Either of those can be quite extreme for people, or they might just be mild and they might be there, but they're just taking the edge off life. And that's not what we want. We want you to be feeling good. So, 20% of the population at least probably have some anxiety or depression at one time. And, a higher incidence can happen if there's a family history or other things that are going on. Now, what we do know about the brain chemistry that helps a bit with mood is that there are some particular brain chemicals called serotonin, there's one called dopamine, there's noradrenaline, there's something called GABA. There's a range of other brain chemicals as well that have a role to play with mood, but they're not the whole story around it. But what we also know is that the production of those things depends upon nutrients in our body. So we need proteins to build them. We need vitamin B6 and zinc. We need some magnesium. There's a role of vitamin D as well. In addition, things that cause inflammation in the brain can actually cause disruption for anxiety and depression. And so we've got what we call a gut-brain connection that happens as well. And if our gut is inflamed, we can actually have that impacting upon how the brain is working. So we can have nutrients that aren't getting absorbed, or we can have waste products or byproducts from the gut getting in the blood and affecting the brain. Things like gluten, which is in wheat. It's a protein found in the wheat grain. Gluten can get into the bloodstream, and it actually makes the gut membrane what we call leaky or permeable. It allows things through that shouldn't come through, and it does exactly the same thing in the brain. So we can get a bit of a leaky brain barrier as well. So some people with anxiety, depression are in fact just gluten sensitive, or possibly even celiac. So looking at dietary intake is really important. Gut function is important too, and we're looking at anxiety and depression. We can measure the brain chemicals, sort of. It's not a really easy thing for us to measure. You can look at urine levels to see whether you've metabolized or used brain chemicals. So we can look at the waste product around those, but not really at their level because they're purely in the brain. They're not in the bloodstream. So we can't take a blood test to measure serotonin levels. We have to base it on how people feel. Low serotonin is typically what doctors would say is contributing to depression, but there's a whole lot more to it than that. When we actually look at this as a functional medicine or integrative doctor, we consider a range of different factors as well. We actually measure something called histamine. Now, histamine is a bit of a brain chemical as well, and it's in the bloodstream, so we can measure it on a blood test. But histamine is used in order to make some of these brain chemicals. And so if we've got a high level of histamine, it usually suggests we're not making the brain chemicals very well. So we're stockpiling the histamine because the factory is on go slow and we're not pushing out the brain chemicals properly. So high histamine levels can suggest low brain chemistry, and the opposite can be true. You can have low histamine and in fact be overproducing the brain chemicals. In that situation, people feel a bit more anxious and they have a bit more of an agitated depression, or even a bit more of a paranoid type depression. So they're feeling really conscious of what other people might be saying or thinking about them. They're really sensitive to the situations around them, but they can also still be feeling a bit depressed. If it's the other way around, we have more of that apathy or that slowness and that lacking of drive and feeling a bit sad. So it depends on what's going on as to what we might do to manage those symptoms. So if we need to look at trying to balance out the brain chemistry, if we're not producing enough, we'll be making sure we're using some nutrients to help support those productions of the brain chemicals. We might also look at using a herb called St. John's wort, which helps to improve those levels of serotonin in the brain chemicals. You can supplement with something called GABA, which helps to lower down the anxiety feelings. It's more of a calming, relaxing type one. So there's a range of things that we can do to rebalance the brain chemistry, but we need to know, are we over or under producing? What are the symptoms that are going on? Is there a gut role going on with this as well? Is it about food intolerances? And then of course, it's all about external circumstances as well. So it's what's happening in life. And often it's a response to the stresses in life that's going on. So having a good look at, what is it that's impacting on me and my thoughts and my feelings has to be a big part of how we manage these symptoms. It's not just about trying to rebalance the chemistry. We've got to put the whole picture together. So there's more we can talk about if we need to around that. If you've got any questions, then you can find me on the website below. I'm Dr. Kylie Dodsworth. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.